Welcome to Legal Lines. My name is Locke Meredith. We don't live in a communist country, and what that means is you get to vote. We've got elections coming up on October 5th for the election of judges and also the tax assessor. We are very pleased to have on the show today Anthony Marabella. He is running for judge on the 19th Judicial District Court. So join us on Legal Lines. We'll be right back. Welcome. I'm Locke Meredith. This is Legal Lines, and we're very pleased to have on the show with us today Tony Marabella. Tony has been a lawyer for 29 years, both on the defense side and the prosecuting side in the criminal, primarily practice of law, and he's running for judge. Tony, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you, Locke, for having me.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, a little personal history.
I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, graduated from Catholic High School in 1964, 56 years old. I got married in 1967. I've been married to the same woman, Diane Marabella, just a wonderful woman, for 35 years. I have a son who's...
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
I have a son who's 29 years old. He lives in Birmingham, Alabama. Growing up, I worked in my dad's service station. They had a service station on Perkins Road. You know where the ZZ Gardens and DeGiulio's, all of that? Well, before the interstate came through, our service station was right next to where ZZ Gardens is.
I think you said you did that all the way up to law school.
I worked in the service station from the time I was at Catholic High School through college and through law school. And we moved the service station down Perkins Road, the corner of Cedardale and Perkins, where Zippy's is now. It's a burrito stand now. But I worked there many, many years. I worked next to my dad and next to my Uncle Frank, who is still alive. My uncle just retired about 5 or 6 years ago and is doing extremely well.
So went to LSU Law School, graduated?
Graduated from LSU, from LSU Law School. Went to work for, sort of did a little bit of private practice with a lawyer by the name of Charles Miller, but I was working at the time in the city prosecutor's office for the parish attorney's office. I prosecuted there for 2 years. I prosecuted DWIs, any sort of misdemeanor cases that came along. I was basically the chief prosecutor in that section.
And misdemeanors means what?
Misdemeanor means it's a crime. It's a crime, but it's punishable up to 6 months in jail.
And then anything over 6 months is a...
Anything potentially over 6 months is a felony charge, yes.
All right, so you did that for a couple of years in the city courts.
I did that in city court until 1975. One of my law school classmates, Doug Morrow, was in the district attorney's office at the time. There was an opening. O.C. Brown was the DA. There was an opening there, which were rare. They didn't have very many openings over there. There was an opening. He asked me to come and interview. He thought I would make a good assistant DA. I interviewed. I got the job, and I worked there for about 3.5 years.
Now, what did you do there?
When I first got there, I did the misdemeanors, basically the same thing. I worked in a section with Ralph Roy, who was a lifelong prosecutor there, and just a wonderful guy, someone that I learned a lot from. After 6 months, I went into the career criminal section with Ralph, where Ralph and I prosecuted career criminals.
Now, what does that mean?
People who had at least 3 felony convictions, bad actors. Okay. We prosecuted many of those people. In fact, there are at least 5 of them that I know of that are still in jail 20-some years later. After I stayed about 1.5 years there, Doug had left and became a city court judge, and Judge Doug Gonzalez was elected judge, and I was then appointed to be, by the district attorney, appointed to be the section chief in his section.
Now, what does that mean, a section chief?
Basically, I oversaw 2 felony assistants. Those felony assistants happened to be Ralph Tyson, who is a federal judge now, and Tim Screen, who is the chief of the criminal division at the Attorney General's office. I prosecuted, while I was in the district attorney's office, although I've been sort of on the other side, if you will, longer, I prosecuted more cases in the district attorney's office. I prosecuted probably 40 or 50 felony trials there.
And it was different back then than it is now. You were doing it every week.
We did. The way the career criminal section worked is that we were trying cases every week in different sections. We were not assigned to a particular section. We worked around and we tried cases. And we worked with the victims. We worked with the police department. We worked with many of those people. In fact, as I've been speaking in running, some of the young policemen that I worked with, one of which is Sid Newman, who is the head of Crime Stoppers now, one of which is Pat Inglade, who is the police chief, one of which is Greg Ferries, who's the former police chief.
Been around a long time.
Been around a long time. And in fact, some of the young men in the police department, I worked with their dads when they were working there.
Did that for what? I think you said 5 years or so?
I did that for I prosecuted for approximately 5 years. I left the DA's office in late 1978, and it was a very tough decision because I was very content in the district attorney's office. I enjoyed doing what I was doing. I enjoyed working with the victims. I enjoyed working with the police department, and I made very good friends, lifelong friends that I still am close with now. Alton Moran, who was a section chief also in the district attorney's office, had just been appointed public defender. At the time, the only public defender system we had was that lawyers were being appointed. But they went to a staff system, and Alton was trying to, yes, Alton was trying to staff his office with competent lawyers. And he asked me if I was interested in going over there. And it was a very difficult decision because I was very content in the DA's office. The decision I had to make is, was I going to make a career out of the district attorney's office, or did I want to move on, go into the public defender's office for about a year, which was a lot easier for me to move into the private practice. My wife and I went on vacation for the first vacation we had. It was a 2-week vacation, and I spent literally every night awake vacillating on what to do. Well, the final decision was I decided to leave, and it was a very difficult decision for me to make.
Did that for a year and a half?
I did that for approximately a year and a half in the public defender's office.
Went on into the
and then I moved
practice.
into private practice.
Which encompassed, I think, what you said, general civil, but then a little focus on defense.
My private practice included everything. I was handling family court cases. I was handling personal injury cases. I was handling leases. I was handling little business litigation. I did most everything. But reality is such, my training was in the criminal area, and that's sort of where I sort of vacillated to. I started doing more and more criminal defense work. Throughout the course of working in the criminal defense field, it became obvious to me that I had made some very good contacts within the police department, within the crime lab. I kind of was on the other side, but it was the same people I was working with on a day-in, day-out basis. And the relationship that I had established before, and that relationship that I'm proud to say was one of mutual respect and belief in each other's values.
In fact, I think you mentioned to me that you were actually appointed judge ad hoc.
Oh, I was an ad hoc judge in city court, appointed probably, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 times as an ad hoc. So I have sat as an ad hoc judge, judging misdemeanor cases.
And so you've been on all facets of this criminal process that our system goes through. You've been a prosecutor,
right?
You've been a defense attorney, and then you've been a judge.
I have been a judge as well.
And you know how every single aspect works, the various departments, crime lab, etc.
Absolutely. In fact, when I was in the district attorney's office, and I think it's probably still the same way, on every major case, like a murder or a rape, when we were on duty, and I was on duty at least once every month, 1 week every month, we would actually go out on the calls. We actually saw firsthand what the police do, how they gather evidence, what they do, when and why they take fingerprints, and that sort of thing. So I mean, those things have stuck with me all these years.
The different hats that you've had to wear, how did they differ?
Well, they differ in some, obviously they differ in who you're representing and how you apply the law. But reality is such, the law is the law, and you always are faithful and truthful to the law. If you do your job honestly and ethically, you basically follow the law. You follow it from a different perspective. You're looking for different things. As a prosecutor, your job is to put on a case to prove someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. As a defense lawyer, your job is to attack or at least challenge the evidence to show equally and evenly to a court or to a jury what the facts really are.
And now you want to run for judge. We'll talk about that in the next segment. We'll be right back with you. I'm Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. Welcome back. I'm Locke Meredith, and this is Legal Lines. Again, we're happy to have with us today Tony Marabella. He's been an attorney for 29 years, and he's running for judge. Tony, again, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Locke.
Let's talk about what in the world makes somebody want to run for judge and go through the political process that you have to go through.
Well, I'll tell you what happened with me. I can't speak for everybody, but what happened with me, and as corny as it may sound, the legal community in East Baton Rouge Parish, the community of East Baton Rouge Parish has been wonderful to me and my family. We have achieved things in life that I never thought I would be able to achieve, especially working at that service station. I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I was the first to go to law school, the only to go to law school. And this community has been wonderful to me. I love practicing law. I love the law. I have just a strong passion for it. I've been successful. I've made some money in practicing law. And my wife and I have talked about this, and when we talked about how much judges make as opposed to how we were doing, I mean, her first question was, now tell me again why we want to do this. But she's very supportive of me, and the reason is that I want to give back to this community. I think that I've got a lot to offer this community. I've been a lawyer for 29 years. I've got experience. I think that my character, simply because of the people who are supporting me, I'm proud to say that I'm being supported by the prosecutors, the people who I have tried cases against for the last 20 years. They are all in favor of me. They're all supporting me. Law enforcement is behind me. The fire department is behind me. The Alliance for Judicial Excellence is behind me. I want to get on the bench, and I want to make a difference. I believe that we have a very fine judiciary right now, and I think I could be a valuable asset to it. And it really is about public service. As corny as that sounds, it really is about public service. It's about giving back. I'm not running for the paycheck, and I'm not running for the job. I'm running because I believe that I can make a difference on the bench.
So after you convinced your wife it was the right thing to do, I think you said she's does social?
She's a licensed professional counselor, yes.
Right. And so you convinced her to do it, let you do it, and then what do you do?
Well, in this particular case, what happened is after I after I decided I was going to do it, it was Mike McDonald's seat. So the first thing I did, I mean, I really didn't know what to do. I've never run before. I never thought about it.
And you're referring to Judge Mike McDonald?
Judge Mike McDonald.
And he's moving to the First Circuit Court of Appeals. He's unopposed.
So the first thing I did when we got back into town, and this decision was made when we were at the bench bar conference in Alabama in April of this year. First thing I did when I got back is I called Mike, and I went to see him. I said, Mike, first off, number one, are you moving up to the Court of Appeals? I'm certainly not going to run against you because Mike and I have been friends for years. We went to rival schools. I went to Catholic High, he went to Baton Rouge High, but at the same time, and we worked together in the DA's office. And Mike said, absolutely, Tony, I'm moving up, and I think it's wonderful. I support you in every way to run. And the next step was, and Mike, of course, was running to take Judge Doug Gonzalez's place, who was retiring from the Court of Appeals. So the next step was I called Judge Gonzalez to make sure that he was, in fact, retiring, because I didn't want to put myself out there and suggest that I was running for something that against someone who wasn't giving up their seats. And Judge Gonzalez indicated to me that he absolutely was retiring and reminded me that he had been trying to get me to run for judge for the last 15 years. And I told him, well, you know, it finally sunk in. I'm ready. I'm finally ready to do it. And once I did that, I began calling lawyers. I began picking up the telephone and calling lawyers and asking for their support.
Now, when you say asking for their support, you're not asking them for money because you can't ask them for money.
I can't do that. What I did was I picked up the telephone and literally almost went down the alphabet and started calling lawyers and said, you know, Arthur Abercrombie, for example, might be in the first lawyer I called.
Right.
Yes, in the A's. Arthur Tony Marabella, I'm running for Mike McDonald's open seat. I'd appreciate your support. And I can't say how touched I was and how humbled I was by the reactions from almost every one of them. They were very excited, very supportive. The fact that a lawyer, as they said, of one who's been practicing as long as I had, who had been in the trenches for so many years, who had been very successful, played all the roles, was willing to put himself up to public service. The response from the attorneys in the community, not only lawyers, but judges and law professors, was just phenomenal.
So you kind of have to talk to the profession with whom you're going to deal, which of course is the lawyers, but they're not the only ones who are voting.
Oh no, absolutely not. You have to get out in the general public. I mean, if only the lawyers were voting, I'd win by 100% because my opponent doesn't live in the district. But it's not just the lawyers. You have to get out there and you have to do things. We had a fundraiser. The next thing one does is we have a fundraiser. I went to my friends, Hiller Moore, who is my former law partner, his father, Hiller Moore Jr., who is the past president of Associated Grocers. He is my campaign manager. I went to them and asked them for some guidance and some help to help me get together a group of people to figure out what I do. Right. I didn't know what to do. You know, I didn't know exactly what one was supposed to do. And we did get together. And Ralph Stevens, who is also a younger than me, but a graduate of Catholic High as well, who works for Postal Wait Netterville, is my treasurer. He agreed to be my treasurer, so he's taking care of all the finances and he takes care of all of those reporting requirements. And then the next step was to try to raise a little money and try to get my name out there and try to talk to some people.
So you get a team team, and then you go out. You got to get some money together because you got to spend money because
exactly.
now you got to sell yourself to the public.
Exactly. To let people.
How do you do that?
Well, we had a fundraiser. We had a fundraiser at Drusilla, and we had a phenomenal turnout. Many lawyers came, but to me, the thing that was most rewarding to me was I had friends who I'd known since I was in grammar school come, former high school classmates, parents of former friends, former high school classmates. I mean, we must have had 300 people at Drusilla where we had our party, and probably 150 of them were simply just people that I knew from my life.
Non-lawyers.
Non-lawyers that came and talked with me. If I had to guess, I'd bet they gave me $25, $50, something like that. But that's the support that I've had, and I'm really proud of that. My Uncle Frank, who I worked alongside of for many, many years, who's got arthritis now, was sort of the star of the show that night. It was very nice.
What did you sing or something?
No, I just introduced him, and he had that service station for many years. I mean, my first contact with the judges was Judge E. Gordon West. A lot of people had contact with Judge West in the courtroom. I had contact with him because I waited on him at the service station and pumped gas in his car, and Judge Mosley as well. So I knew a lot of judges, but I knew them from working on their cars in a different perspective. And my Uncle Frank knew them for many, many years. And that night, he knew as many lawyers as I knew because they had all been customers at his service station. So he really was, he's very proud of me, but I'm very proud of him.
So once you kind of put together some money or accumulate some money, how do you spend it? Well, I guess you have to go through the mass media, but that doesn't do everything for you.
What we did initially was that we did little radio spots, and we bought some signs, and we put out just a few signs. And the people that were sort of helping me with my campaign kept telling me that, look, no lawyer is going to run against you, and only a lawyer can run against you, and they're all behind you. I mean, I've got civil lawyers, defense lawyers, prosecutors, the whole bar was behind me. So there was a strong consensus that probably I would go in unopposed, which is unheard of for a person running for the first time. But that didn't happen. So at the 11th hour, about noon, the last day of qualifying, a young man who I'd never met before qualified for judge. Then we had to start spending money.
Let's talk about the next stage of the process that you have to go through running for judge. We'll be right back with you. I'm Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and again, very pleased to have on the show Tony Marabella. He is running for judge, and we're talking about the process of running for judge and what it's like, what you got to do. Tony, again, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Locke.
We were talking about the fact that you were taking over or running for the seat being vacated by Judge McDonald. Now, that's a civil seat, right?
Judge McDonald was sitting at a civil seat, but the seat that will be replaced will be a criminal seat, because the way the system works in East Baton Rouge Parish, it's on the seniority system. So several judges or one judge will at least move up. So the seat that we are running for will be a criminal seat.
Okay. And, of course, that's where you've done 29 years of practice.
Correct.
Let's talk about, we started a little bit, you've kind of garnered the support of the legal profession, but again, they're not the only ones that vote.
Absolutely not.
And so you got to go talk to everybody else that's voting on October 5th.
That's correct.
How do you do it?
Tell you what we do, and it was foreign to us. I mean, I just didn't know. You certainly can't go reach 100,000 voters. So you begin a slow process, and what we have been doing, we have been walking neighborhoods every Saturday morning, sometimes on Sunday afternoons, and sometimes during the week. My wife and I, and many of our friends and family, there are about 20 of us that work, and it's sort of a family-oriented sort of thing. We all go out and walk. We hit neighborhoods, and we walk. We knock on doors. We have Tony Marabella shirts that say "Vote for Tony Marabella, Judge." And
walking billboards,
walking billboards, and we're knocking on doors, and we're talking to people. And we were a little concerned because, with a lot of the publicity going on with the serial killer out, and people are very concerned about opening their doors. I have been pleasantly surprised at the wonderful reception that we've been getting. I've learned that the people of this parish really care about what goes on in their parish, and they're interested in knowing what the elected official, who they are, what their experience is, and what they're doing. I've met many, many wonderful people throughout this parish, and we've walked many neighborhoods in this parish. We've got a lot we're not going to get to all of them. We're trying to walk as many as we can. But we've met a lot of people, and we've talked to a lot of people, and they're very interested and they're very caring about what's going on.
Tell me what are the most common questions that you're hearing when you're knocking on the doors?
One of the questions is, well, what does a judge do? Am I ever going to be before a judge? You know, where are you running from? Why are you, what's your district? Or what kind of cases do you try? Those sorts of things. Some of the questions are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? To be perfectly honest with you, everybody that I've talked to after I told them who I was and what I did and what my experience was and the fact that I was running for judge, that didn't matter anymore. It didn't matter whether I was a Democrat or whether I was a Republican. They were more interested in who I was and how could I do the job and what my experience was for doing the job. I was tremendously pleased at the way the people reacted in East Baton Rouge Parish as we walked the streets. I mean, Baton Rouge is as friendly a place as I always thought it was. Having never done this before, I was concerned that people were going to slam doors and say, yeah, thank you, go away. That's not the case at all.
What did you tell them when they said, what does a judge do? Because you're going for that hat for a permanent wear this time.
What I told them a judge does, a judge has to be fair, and he has to treat both parties and both sides equally and fair, and has to be fair to everybody that comes before them. And they ask questions about, well, what kind of judgeship is it? Is it going to be are you going to try cases that involve automobile accidents, that sort of stuff. So I sit there and I talk with them. And part of the problem that we have, my wife keeps saying to me, she says, when you walk a neighborhood, it takes you a week to walk a block, because I sit there and I talk to them for hours. I really am enjoying doing this. And part of the problem is I don't get to walk quite as much as I'd like to because I talk too much.
Well, we were talking that the hat that the judge wears is a lot different from being the prosecutor or the defense attorney, because the burden's not on you to make sure the case is prepared.
It is. The roles are all different. And as a prosecutor, I knew what that role was. As a defense lawyer, you know what that role is. And as a judge, it's also different, because you are no longer an advocate for either side. You're not just a referee, but I mean you're not an advocate to either side. You're there to make sure that everything is done fairly and everybody gets a fair shot in the courtroom. When I was an ad hoc judge in city court, we tried misdemeanor cases. There was a tendency to want to help out one side or the other, because you as a lawyer you know where they ought to be going. But as a judge, I think that you need to allow the lawyers to develop their cases the way they develop their cases, and you need to allow everybody to have their say in the courtroom. And people people want to walk out of that courtroom knowing that that judge, regardless of what that decision was, listened to him or her in both sides and made what was, at least to the judge, a fair and reasonable decision. That's the main thing that most people that I talked to wanted to know, that they would get a fair shot in my courtroom if they came to me for whatever reason, whether it would be for a lease or whether they had a traffic ticket or whatever it was. They just wanted to know that I would be fair to whoever was in that courtroom, and that was the most important thing to them.
As I understand it, the opponents in this, you only found out, what, 4 hours before the deadline?
Right. He qualified on right around 1 o'clock, I think, on the last day of qualifying, which was on a Friday.
Now, what kind of experience does he have as a criminal attorney?
I never knew him. I met him for the first time a week or so ago. I mean, I don't think he's ever had any criminal experience. I know he's not been a prosecutor. I don't think he's ever done any defense work. I've been in the 6th floor is where the criminal court floors are. I've roamed those floors since 1977 when that new building was built. I've never seen him up there. So I don't know what experience he has. I don't think he has very much experience, if he has any. He certainly has no prosecutorial experience. If he does, he may have a limited amount of defense experience, but I don't know that. We
were talking about there are some states that actually have the judges appointed, either by the governor or a commission or a committee.
Right.
As I understand it, kind of your opinion about the process or what you thought maybe was a better way of doing it has changed.
I'll tell you what my thought was initially, before I decided to ever run for judge. I always thought that a good merit selection system, if you could take the politics out of it, now I'm not sure how one could do that, but if you could take the politics out of it, a good merit selection system would be a good way of getting our judges, because I thought the election process was more of a political kind of a thing, and nobody really paid any attention to that.
And when you say merit selection, you're talking about the appointment.
I'm talking,
in other words, no elections.
Exactly. I'm talking about someone with experience, perhaps law professors, not politicians, but people who really know the law and really know experience, who would interview people and say, okay, these persons are qualified to be a judge, and then select them as being a judge. I always leaned toward the election process because I've always been in favor of having the people make the decision, but I always thought that sometimes we didn't get the best judges. As I've walked the streets and as I've talked to people, people of this parish really care about what goes on in their parish, and they have the right to elect those judges. Our job is to get to them and tell them who we are. And once we do that, and once they look, and once they get who we are, they will make the decision as to who the best judge is. I am now convinced that that's the best way to go.
Because the people have spoken.
Because of the people. I mean, the people of this parish really do care. I knew they cared about some things. I just didn't think they cared that much about judges' races, but they care about everything.
Tony, thank you very much for being on the show. And let's remind everybody, vote October 5th for the judicial elections. Thank you for being with us. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Line.